It started with a spreadsheet, not a whisper from a concerned friend or a lipstick stain on a collar, but a single, recurring line item on our joint savings account that bled our future dry. For 20 years, I'd been the steady hand, the reliable provider, the man who believed our shared dream of a cabin in the mountains was built on love and mutual sacrifice. I was wrong. The money wasn't funding our someday, it was funding her someone else. The betrayal was a cold, sharp blade, but the rage that followed was a forge. It reshaped me from a heartbroken husband into the architect of a reckoning she would never see coming. You think you know how this ends, a bitter divorce, a quiet retreat into solitude. Think again. What I uncovered next and what I did with that truth changed everything. Before diving in, hit that subscribe button and comment below. Have you ever dealt with betrayal? Let's hear your stories. Part 1, The Scent of Dissatisfaction. For the better part of 2 decades, our marriage ran on a kind of comfortable, predictable autopilot. I'm Mark, 48 years old, and for as long as I could remember, my life's rhythm was set by the 7:15 a.m. train into the city, the reassuring weight of my accounting ledger, and the quiet satisfaction of providing for my family. My wife, Sarah, was the vibrant counterpoint to my steadiness. She was the one who chose the bold paint colors for the walls, planned spontaneous weekend trips when our daughter Emily was younger, and filled our suburban home with a life I, in my quiet way, adored. We had a plan. It was our sacred pact, whispered over cheap wine when we were young and broke, and solidified in a high-yield savings account as we grew older and more stable. The cabin fund, we called it. Every month, a significant chunk of my salary and a smaller piece of hers from her part-time marketing job went straight into that account. It was our endgame, a rustic, quiet place in the Blue Ridge Mountains where we could watch the seasons change without the drone of lawnmowers and distant sirens. I could picture it so clearly, a workshop for my woodworking, a big porch for her morning coffee, and a fireplace that would crackle through the long, peaceful winters of our retirement. It was more than a financial goal, it was the tangible proof of our shared journey. The first tremor was so subtle I almost missed it. It was a scent. For years, Sarah had worn the same light, floral perfume, a scent so familiar it was practically woven into the fabric of our lives. Then one evening, as she leaned in to kiss me goodbye before heading out to her new advanced yoga and wellness seminar, I caught something different. It was musky, expensive, and utterly foreign. "New perfume?" I asked, my nose twitching. She paused, her hand on the doorknob. "Oh, just a sample I got, you like it?" She didn't wait for an answer, just smiled a little too brightly and slipped out the door. The seminars became a regular thing, Tuesday and Thursday evenings, sometimes a full-day workshop on a Saturday. They were, she explained, essential for her personal growth and networking. She'd come home glowing, her cheeks flushed, full of vague talk about breaking through energetic blockages and manifesting her best self. I was happy for her. Or I told myself I was. After Emily left for college last year, the house had felt cavernously quiet, and I worried Sarah was feeling the empty nest syndrome more acutely than I was. If a pricey yoga class helped, who was I to argue? But the changes kept stacking up like small, mismatched blocks in a Jenga tower. Her phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, was now her constant companion, always screen down. A quiet ping from its speakers would have her snatching it up with a nervous energy that felt jarring in our peaceful home. She bought a whole new wardrobe, filled with form-fitting athletic wear and slinky dresses that she hadn't worn since her 20s. "Wow," I'd said one night, watching her get ready for another seminar, "you look amazing." "I feel amazing," she'd replied, her eyes focused on her own reflection in the mirror, not mine. There was a hard, glittering edge to her I hadn't seen before. The financial side was where my logical, accountant's brain started to trip its own internal alarms. Small things at first. A charge for a ridiculously expensive lunch at a trendy downtown bistro I knew she hated. A networking lunch for a potential client, she'd explained breezily. Then came the charges from a high-end men's clothing store. "Oh, that was a birthday gift for my brother," she'd said, even though his birthday was 6 months away. Each time I'd let it go, questioning her felt like an accusation, a betrayal of the trust that had been the bedrock of our marriage. I was the steady, trusting husband. That was my role. To doubt her was to doubt myself, to doubt the entire structure of the life we had built. I told myself I was being paranoid. Midlife crisis, that's all it was. She was rediscovering herself, and it was a little more expensive than I'd anticipated. The cabin fund could take a small hit. Her happiness was worth it. I see the irony now, the dark, pathetic humor in my own willful blindness. I was so busy being the supportive husband that I failed to see I was no longer the man she wanted support from. Part 2. The spreadsheet never lies. The discovery didn't happen in a dramatic flurry of suspicion. It happened on a Tuesday night under the sterile, fluorescent glow of my home office lamp. Sarah was out at her seminar, and I was doing what I did every few months, a deep dive into our finances. It was my form of meditation, a ritual of order and control. I liked seeing the numbers line up, watching our net worth inch upward, feeling the tangible progress toward our cabin dream. I opened the statement for our joint savings, the cabin fund. Our contributions were there, steady as a heartbeat, but the balance wasn't growing as it should have been. My brow furrowed, I scrolled through the withdrawals. Most were expected transfers to our checking for quarterly taxes, a planned withdrawal for a new roof last year, but then my eyes snagged on a series of recurring payments that made no sense. Aspire Wellness Retreat, $850. The first one was 3 months ago, then another the month after, and another. There were other, smaller charges from the same vendor too, $250 here, $300 there. My heart started a low, heavy thud against my ribs. Sarah had mentioned a weekend retreat once, said it was a gift from her sister, but this was a pattern, a very expensive pattern. A quick Google search for Aspire Wellness Retreat pulled up a website for a boutique hotel and spa about an hour out of town. It was sleek, modern, and screamed romantic getaway. The photos showed couples laughing in hot tubs, clinking champagne glasses on private balconies, and getting tandem massages. This wasn't a yoga seminar. This was a lover's paradise. The air in my office suddenly felt thin, hard to breathe. I clicked through the hotel's packages. The couple's rejuvenation package was $850. It included a deluxe suite, champagne on arrival, and a spa credit. The smaller charges matched their day spa for 2 offerings. For 2, I felt a wave of nausea. My mind, the logical, analytical mind of an accountant, was racing, connecting dots I hadn't even realized were there. The new perfume. The secret phone calls, the flushed cheeks when she came home late, the expensive lunches, the men's clothing. It wasn't a midlife crisis, it was an affair, and I was paying for it. Our dream, our cabin, our future was funding her secret life. The betrayal was so profound it was almost surreal. It wasn't just the sex, the thought of which was a physical blow, but the money. The money was our shared language of sacrifice and trust. Every extra hour I worked, every penny I meticulously saved was an "I love you," a brick in the foundation of our future. She hadn't just cheated on me, she had stolen from us. She had taken our shared dream and melted it down to pay for cheap thrills. My hands were shaking as I opened our shared cloud drive, looking for, I don't know what, an explanation, a mistake. I navigated to the photo folder, a digital archive of our life together, and there, in a subfolder I didn't recognize, labeled simply projects, I found it. It wasn't marketing material. It was a collection of screenshots, text messages. Him can't wait for Tuesday, the usual spot. Sarah, I'm counting the minutes. I've booked the package. My treat. Him, you spoil me, beautiful. Does Mark suspect a thing? Sarah, he's too busy with his precious spreadsheets. He has no idea. The words hit me with the force of a physical impact, knocking the wind out of my lungs. Precious spreadsheets. She was mocking the very thing I did to build our life together, using my diligence as a cover for her deceit. I scrolled further. There were pictures, selfies of her with a man I vaguely recognized, a ridiculously handsome, younger guy from her gym, Liam, the personal trainer. They were laughing, clinking glasses in a hotel room I now recognized from the Aspire Wellness website. In one photo, he was wearing a watch that looked suspiciously like the one I saw on the receipt from the men's store. That was it. The floor fell away. The man who sat at his desk at 10:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night was not the same man who had sat there an hour earlier. That man was a husband, a partner, a fool. This new man was something else entirely. Something colder, harder, and terrifyingly clear. Part 3, The Symphony of Silence. The hours after the discovery were a strange, silent movie of grief. I didn't rage, I didn't throw things. The initial shock gave way to a profound, hollow emptiness. I walked through the house we had shared for 2 decades, touching objects that now seemed like props on a stage. The framed photo on the mantelpiece of us on our 20th anniversary, smiling, her head on my shoulder. The collection of coffee mugs from our travels. The worn spot on the sofa where I sat every evening. It was all a lie. A beautifully decorated, comfortable lie. When Sarah came home around 11 p.m., I was sitting in the dark living room. I had closed the laptop, erased my search history, and composed my face into a mask of placid neutrality. My heart was a jackhammer against my ribs, but on the outside I was a statue. "Mark, you're still up?" she asked, her voice light and airy. She dropped her keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, the familiar clatter now sounding like a gunshot in the silence. She leaned down to kiss me, and the musky scent of her new perfume, mingled with the faint, cloying aroma of another man's cologne, filled my senses. I didn't flinch, I just looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the faint lines of age around her eyes, the smile that no longer reached them, the subtle tension in her jaw. She was a stranger. "How was the seminar?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. "Oh, good, very." "Centering," she said, avoiding my gaze as she busied herself with taking off her jacket. "I'm exhausted. Think I'll head straight up." The temptation to scream, to hold up the bank statements, to shove the photos from the cloud drive in her face, was a roaring inferno in my chest. But a cold, calculating voice in the back of my head whispered, "Not yet. Don't show your hand, information is power." That night I lay beside her in our bed, a chasm of cold sheets between us. Her breathing was even peaceful, she was asleep in minutes. I stared at the ceiling for hours, my mind a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. There was the blinding rage, a primal urge to destroy her world as she had destroyed mine. Then came the waves of heartbreak, so intense they felt like a physical drowning. Flashbacks played on a loop in my mind, our wedding day, the birth of our daughter, the quiet moments of intimacy that had once been my anchor. Had any of it been real? Was I that much of a fool? Self-doubt was a creeping, insidious poison. Had I been a bad husband? Had I become boring, predictable? My precious spreadsheets mocked me. I had provided, I had been faithful, I had been there, but maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe in my quest to build a secure future, I had forgotten to live in the present. This internal debate was torture. One moment I was a victim, a man deeply wronged. The next, I was a co-conspirator in the death of my own marriage, a man whose steadfastness had become a form of neglect. The erotic memories were the cruelest. I remembered the passion of our early years, the stolen moments, the way her body felt against mine. Now, the thought of her with him, in a bed our future had paid for, was a visceral violation that made my skin crawl. The love and desire I once felt were curdling into something ugly and vengeful. By the time the first rays of dawn crept through the blinds, a decision had begun to solidify. A simple confrontation was too good for her. A quiet divorce was too easy. She hadn't just broken my heart, she had robbed me. She had committed fraud on an emotional and financial level. She had laughed at my prudence while spending our future on her fleeting pleasure. No, I wouldn't just get mad, I would get everything. The rage was no longer just a hot, chaotic fire. It was cooling, hardening into something sharp and precise. A plan. Part 4, the Gaslight Grand Prix. A week passed. It was the longest, most surreal week of my life. I moved through my days like an actor playing the part of Mark, the loving husband. I made coffee in the morning. I asked about her day. I listened to her talk about her marketing projects and her vapid yoga philosophies. Every word she spoke, every casual touch, was a fresh layer of insult on a raw wound. My silence was my shield and my weapon. I was observing, gathering data, letting her dig her own grave. I decided to test the waters, to give her one last chance to come clean, or more accurately, to see just how deep her deception ran. We were paying bills one evening, a mundane ritual we'd done together for years. I casually slid the savings account statement across the dining room table. "Hey, I was looking at the cabin fund," I began, my voice a carefully calibrated instrument of mild concern. "The balance seems a little lower than I projected. Did we have an expense I forgot about?" I watched her face. For a split second, a flicker of panic crossed her eyes, so fast I would have missed it if I hadn't been studying her like a hawk. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a look of manufactured nonchalance. She picked up the statement, her manicured nails tapping on the paper. "Oh, that," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "That's just the Aspire seminars. I told you about them. They're an investment in my well-being, Mark. In our well-being, a happy wife, a happy life, right?" She smiled, a practiced, saccharine smile that didn't touch her eyes. $850, Sarah, I pressed gently. That's more than a seminar. The website calls it a couple's rejuvenation package. The gaslighting kicked into high gear, her eyes narrowed. "Are you checking up on me? My God, Mark, I can't believe this. After everything I do to keep myself balanced for this family, you're questioning me over a few dollars. It's a women's empowerment retreat. They just use that couple's language for marketing. You're being paranoid and controlling." She turned it back on me expertly. Suddenly, I was the villain. I was the untrusting, paranoid husband micromanaging her attempts at self-improvement. The audacity of it was breathtaking. It was like watching a master illusionist at work. A few days later, I got the confirmation I needed. I was working from home when the credit card alert popped up on my phone, a charge for $1,200 at a luxury jeweler in the city. I waited. An hour later, I overheard her on the phone in the other room, her voice low and conspiratorial. "He's going to love it," she was whispering, giddy. "No, of course he doesn't know. It's our 6-month anniversary. I had to get him something special. I know, I can't wait for Tuesday either." She was buying her lover anniversary gifts with our money, our money. The sheer, unmitigated gall of it severed the last thread of doubt I had about my chosen path. The part of me that still held a flicker of hope for the woman I married died in that moment. She wasn't a lost soul making a mistake. She was a remorseless, entitled thief. My path was no longer about revenge, it was about justice. A cold, hard financial justice. Part 5, an unexpected alliance. To execute my plan, I needed two things: irrefutable proof and a legal strategy. The spreadsheets and screenshots were a start, but I needed something more concrete, something that couldn't be explained away as a woman's retreat. I needed to place her and Liam together, indisputably. Hiring a private investigator felt like something out of a cheap detective novel, but it was a necessary evil. I found a discreet, highly rated PI and hired him for a single day, the following Tuesday, their anniversary. I gave him their names, photos, and the address of the Aspire Wellness Hotel. All I wanted was a clean, time-stamped photo of them together at the location. While I waited for that, I made a phone call that I had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. I called Sarah's younger sister, Chloe. Chloe and I had always had a good relationship. She was down-to-earth and sharp, the polar opposite of Sarah's increasingly flighty persona. She made a few cryptic comments over the past year about Sarah living in a fantasy world, and I had a hunch she saw more than she let on. We met for coffee. I didn't beat around the bush. I laid it all out, the financial statements, the hotel charges, the name Liam. I watched as her expression shifted from sympathy to a kind of weary resignation. "I knew it," she sighed, stirring her latte with unnecessary vigor. "I mean, I didn't know, but I knew something was wrong. She's been different, Mark, secretive, dismissive. She talks about finding her truth, but it always sounded so selfish." She looked me in the eye, her own filled with a mix of anger and sadness. "She tried to borrow money from me a few months ago, a lot of money. Said it was for a business investment. When I asked for details, she got defensive and accused me of not supporting her dreams. Now I know what the business was." Chloe's validation was like a balm on my wounded psyche. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't a paranoid, controlling husband. I was a man being systematically betrayed. "I need your help," I said quietly. Her support was immediate and unconditional. She helped me piece together a more complete timeline of Sarah's lies. She remembered dates and excuses Sarah had given the family that I could now cross-reference with the hotel charges. But her most crucial contribution was a piece of information that would become the linchpin of my entire plan. "You know, Mom and Dad's 50th anniversary party is in 2 weeks, right?" she said. "The big one at the Fairmont. The whole family will be there, aunts, uncles, everyone. Sarah has been obsessing over it for months. She's even invited some of her new friends." A dark look crossed Chloe's face. "I'll bet you $1,000 Liam is on that guest list." An idea, cold and brilliant, began to form in my mind. A public stage. a captive audience of family and friends to whom Sarah had presented our perfect marriage. It was diabolical, it was theatrical, it was perfect. The climax wouldn't be a shouting match in our living room. It would be a quiet, devastating detonation in the middle of her carefully curated social circle. The day before the party, the Pies report landed in my inbox. It was brutally efficient. A series of high-resolution photos, Sarah and Liam checking into the Aspire Hotel. Laughing as they walked to their room, his arms slung possessively around her shoulder, kissing by the pool. And the piece de resistance, a crystal-clear shot of her fastening a new, very expensive-looking watch, the one I'd seen the charge for, onto his wrist as they sat at a candlelit dinner. I now had everything I needed. The trap was set. Part 6, the anniversary bombshell. The Fairmont ballroom was a sea of champagne flutes and forced smiles. Sarah was in her element, flitting from table to table in a shimmering silver dress that cost more than my first car. She was the gracious host, the loving daughter, the perfect wife. She'd greet me periodically, squeezing my arm and smiling for the crowd, a flawless performance of marital bliss. I played my part, the quiet, proud husband, but beneath the surface my nerves were stretched taut. In my pocket I had a simple manila envelope. I spotted Liam holding court near the bar. He was exactly as his photos suggested, tall, tanned, and radiating an effortless arrogance. He was talking to one of Sarah's cousins, who looked utterly captivated. Sarah had introduced him to everyone as her wellness coach and a dear friend. The audacity was astounding. The moment came after the main course, during the toasts. Sarah's father gave a beautiful, rambling speech about love and commitment, his eyes glistening as he looked at his wife of 50 years. Then he turned the microphone over to Sarah, his darling daughter, to say a few words. This was my cue. Sarah glided to the podium, beaming. 50 years, she began, her voice resonating with practiced emotion. 50 years of partnership, of trust, of building a life together. My parents are an inspiration to us all. They taught me what it means to have a partner you can count on, someone who supports your dreams and shares your future. As she spoke, I quietly got up and walked to the front of the room, near the large projection screen where a slideshow of family photos had been playing all night. I had spoken to the AV technician earlier, a young kid who was more than happy to help for a $100 bill. And I'm so lucky to have that with my own husband, Mark, Sarah continued, gesturing toward our table. For 20 years he has been my rock, my provider, the man who has worked so hard so we can build our own dream together. As she said the word dream, I gave the technician a nod. The slideshow of smiling family photos behind Sarah flickered and changed. On the 10-foot screen, a new image appeared, a high-resolution photo of Sarah and Liam kissing by the pool at the Aspire Hotel. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. Sarah faltered, her words catching in her throat. She glanced behind her and the color drained from her face. Her perfect smile dissolved into a mask of pure horror. I took the microphone from the podium next to her. My voice was steady, devoid of rage, which somehow made it more chilling. Sarah is right, I said, my voice cutting through the stunned silence. We have been building a dream. Our cabin fund, a joint savings account we both contributed to for our future, except it seems we had different dreams. The image on the screen changed again, this time to a clean, simple graphic I had prepared. On the left, a list of dates and withdrawals from our savings. On the right, the corresponding photos from the pie, Sarah and Liam at the hotel, the new watch on his wrist, the receipts for their romantic dinners. Every lie, every theft was laid bare for our entire world to see. She called them wellness seminars, I continued, my voice calm and measured as I addressed the silent, staring crowd. But as you can see, our future, our cabin, was actually funding a couple's rejuvenation package for her and her wellness coach, Liam. I gestured vaguely toward the bar, where Liam looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I turned to Sarah. Her face was a mess of shock and humiliation. Tears were welling in her eyes, but they elicited no sympathy from me. You didn't just cheat on me, Sarah, I said, my voice dropping to a more personal, devastating level. You stole from us, you stole from our future. So tonight, I'm not just ending our marriage, I'm liquidating our assets. My lawyer filed the papers this morning, including a petition to freeze our joint accounts, citing marital waste and financial infidelity. The evidence, as you can see, is quite compelling. I placed the manila envelope, which contained copies of the divorce filing and the evidence, on the podium in front of her. "Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad," I said to the room. Then I turned and without looking back, I walked out of the ballroom, leaving the smoldering wreckage of my old life behind me. Part 7, The Blueprint for a New Foundation. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect: a chaotic explosion of family drama, frantic phone calls, and the swift, merciless churn of the gossip mill. Chloe told me later that Sarah had simply crumpled at the podium after I left. Her parents were devastated, her friends were horrified, and Liam had apparently vanished into thin air the moment all eyes were on him, a coward to the very end. The legal battle was surprisingly short. Faced with irrefutable evidence of financial infidelity, Sarah's position was untenable. Her lawyer quickly advised her to settle. I didn't want to punish her. I wanted what was rightfully mine. I got more than half of the marital assets, including the full remaining balance of the cabin fund, as reimbursement for the money she had squandered. She was forced to sell the house, our house, to pay for her legal fees and find a small apartment on her own. The silver dress and the fancy seminars were a distant memory, but this story isn't about her downfall. It's about my reconstruction. For the first few months, I was adrift. The silence in my small, rented apartment was deafening. The routines that had defined my life for 2 decades were gone. But slowly, painstakingly, I started to build a new foundation, one based not on a shared dream, but on my own. I quit my soul-crushing accounting job. The day I walked out of that office for the last time felt more liberating than any vacation I'd ever taken. I took the cabin fund, my fund, and instead of buying a house in the mountains, I invested in myself. I rented a small workshop space and started the woodworking business I had always dreamed of. I started small, making custom furniture for friends, then for local designers. The work was hard, the hours long, but it was honest. Every piece of wood I shaped, every joint I fastened, felt real and true in a way my spreadsheets never had. My hands, once soft from a keyboard, became calloused and strong. I was creating something tangible, something beautiful from raw materials. I was, in essence, doing for myself what I had once tried to do for my marriage. I didn't seek out revenge, but sometimes life delivers its own brand of irony. About a year after the divorce, I was delivering a custom-built bookcase to a client when I saw Sarah. She was working as a hostess at the restaurant next door. Her face was harder, the vibrant spark gone from her eyes. She saw me, and for a moment her mask of professional pleasantry slipped, revealing a flicker of shame and regret. I didn't gloat. I just gave her a polite, distant nod and went back to my work. We were strangers now, connected only by a past that felt like it belonged to another lifetime. My life now is quieter, smaller, and infinitely more authentic. I haven't bought a cabin in the mountains, but my workshop, filled with the scent of sawdust and varnish, has become my sanctuary. I've started dating again, cautiously, but with an honesty I wasn't capable of before. I know who I am now. I am not just a provider or a partner. I am a creator, a survivor, a man who looked into the abyss of betrayal and instead of falling, learned how to build wings. The pain of what Sarah did will likely never fade completely, but it no longer defines me. It is simply a scar, a reminder of a collapsed structure that had to be cleared away to make room for something new, something stronger, something that was entirely my own. If this story hit home, like and subscribe for more gripping tales of love and betrayal. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you forgive or seek revenge? What would you have done with the cabin fund? Your stories and perspectives fuel this community. Check out the next video popping up now for another twist-filled saga.